and welcome back for part 2 of 1.0 Digital Defenders lecture series, an introduction to cybersecurity. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. So in 1.3, we're going to look at a historical perspective and the evolution of cybersecurity because, although we use the term cybersecurity today, that doesn't mean that we didn't think about computer security, especially from a physical standpoint, way back when. So let's take a look all the way back to the 1940s to 1970s. Computing comes out. We've got the mainframe computers going on. And believe it or not, we thought about security there. Okay? Most of that initially focused on physical security, right? Due to the controlled environments of early computers. So we made sure that doors were locked, that there were alarms set, etc., so that people couldn't access the mainframes or the rooms in which the mainframes were held. Now, just a quick note here on the graphics that I present, both in the textbook as well as this lecture series. These are AI generated, and what that means is they're not going to be perfect. ChatGPT does not do well currently, at least today, with spelling and grammar. All right. So we'll see those spelling errors throughout. So, fast forward a little bit, 1940s, we're going to hit up to the 1970s, the creation of the ARPANET and our first, now, if you're not familiar, right, ARPANET, started out as a government project for secure communications, an alternate communication mechanism, secure communications throughout the military, right? So then it gets privatized and colleges start to use it to communicate research back and forth between colleges. And we have the emergence of what we know today as the internet. And of course, what does that lead to? It leads to our first malicious software, the creeper virus. So basically, the creeper virus, which was created in 1971 by Bob Thomas, a computer engineer at BBN Technologies, he basically created the software as an experiment to show that software could replicate itself, right? Thus, a virus, right? And in this case, a worm. So, advance a little bit more, late 1970s, we start introducing the idea of encryption with DES, the data encryption standard, which enhances security data exchanges, and laying the groundwork for modern cybersecurity practices as it pertains to data communication and encryption. Now, the last thing on DES is, it was good then. We now know it to be vulnerable. So we don't see DES being used as an encryption algorithm today. Now, before we talk about this slide, I just want to briefly let you know that my passion for cybersecurity means that as a cybersecurity instructor, I'm constantly reading on cybersecurity. I'm looking at everything from the history to, current impacts to, trends within AI and soon quantum computing and how it all impacts cybersecurity. And I would highly suggest that you start your course of study by reading the book, nonfiction book by Nicole Perlroth, who is a former writer for the New York Times, cybersecurity writer. She penned a book entitled How They Tell Me the World Will End, The Cyber Weapons Arms Race. And it is an absolute great read as it pertains to the history of cybersecurity way back when. So great read. If you're into audiobooks, that's also a great way to consume it. So this brings us forward to the 1980s. We saw significant escalation in cyber threats due to the proliferation of malicious software like that initial worm, right? Including viruses highlighted by the Morris worm incident in 1988. So as you can see, what we're looking at here is a picture of Robert Morris, who at that time was a 23-year-old computer science graduate from Cornell, who creates this piece of software, a worm, okay, and he releases it on the internet. However, the worm unintentionally caused a denial of service attack that affected systems, as many prestigious colleges, research universities, including Harvard, Princeton, Berkeley, even NASA. Here's the thing, though. The response to the growing cyber threats of the late 1980s, 1990s saw the development of widespread adoption of firewalls and antiviruses, right? Software as a means of protecting these networks that were shown to be insecure, for example, by the Morris worm. And as we know with the internet, with technology, it just keeps advancing. And one of the, in my opinion, largest threats between 2000 and 2020 was the rise of Internet of Things devices, right? So these are your thermostats, these are cameras you have at your house, those kind of, items that are being mass produced so quickly that there really isn't a focus, even today, as it pertains to cybersecurity and secure software, right? So all of these devices basically created a surge in cybercrime, increasing sophisticated and frequent data breaches affecting individuals and businesses, to the point that these hackers are using things like the thermostat in the fish tank to break into databases in casinos in Las Vegas. Okay, and that's an old breach. Cybersecurity professionals develop advanced defense strategies such as intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems, multi-factor authentication to combat evolving threats. And even the more we combat the threats, as you can see by the chart, the more threats there just seem to be. It's the fact that, although cybersecurity professionals are passionate about protecting networks, cyber criminals are even more passionate about breaking into them. So that brings us, a little bit more on the internet age and beyond 2020, the advent of cloud computing, right? Widespread use of mobile devices. We all have our mobile phone, if we even call it a phone today, right? These all created new cybersecurity challenges. Here comes the, although we're not yet there, the pandemic. Well, let me leave that for the next slide, actually. So, required rapid evolution and protection strategies for all of this data stored. Encryption wasn't enough. Suddenly, all of this data is accessible over the cloud, right? And what's the most important thing? The username and that password, right? And people using passwords that were so easy to crack, suddenly we have access to all of these databases, right? So notable cyber attacks of this era, were the 2017 WannaCry ransomware attack and the Equifax data breach attack. I would suggest that you read about both of those, right? They highlighted weaknesses in operating systems and software. WannaCry took advantage of older versions of Windows. So, the Windows operating system, in this case, the Windows 7 operating system. So even after end of life, 98% of the computers affected were running Windows 7. So suddenly, even though Microsoft's not supporting it anymore, they, out of the graciousness of their heart, came up with a patch to stop WannaCry from moving forward. So, present and future. Well, when we're talking about present and future, we're talking about today, right now, what's happening in cybersecurity today, because, it is an ongoing battle. Threats are constantly evolving. Threat actors are finding new ways into old systems, new ways into new systems, into cloud, into your phone, right? Now, we do have an additional mechanism today, okay, which incorporates artificial intelligence in both prediction, detection, response of cybersecurity threats, but it's also allowing hackers to use it to create better threats, to create better means. So for example, standard attack is a phishing attack, right? You get that email now. Before AI, you read that email, you knew it wasn't from some English speaking person, it didn't make sense, you instantly deleted it. Whereas now they can take those scripts, run them through AI, and create better scripts that more people are going to believe as legitimate, right? In addition, privacy and compliance are central. The GDPR and CCPA require robust data protection. Europe does a great job with this. Europe just released some rules, if you will, regulations on AI, which the United States, I don't think, has even started, right? So we'll look at more of this again throughout this lecture series. So we're going to dive into the topics discussed in depth in this initial series of lectures. So cyber defenders must plan for the future technologies, AI influencing cybersecurity, quantum computing is coming on board. We see Apple just implemented a new encryption mechanism, looking forward and combating what is going to be done in the way of quantum computing as it pertains to data encryption. So the section part of this, 1.4, data protection principles, we're going to take a brief look at the CIA Triad. So, the CIA Triad is really important in cybersecurity. Here's a quote from Matt, who says, in the world of information security, CIA stands for the triad of values that security analysts, CISOs, chief information security officers, and everyone in between are responsible for upholding. So CIA is the three-letter acronym, which we love our acronyms in IT, for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So let's start out with C, confidentiality. Now, again, just a quick graphic generated by ChatGPT, on what confidentiality, integrity, and availability might stand for. In the textbook, I give an example of this in action. So confidentiality within the domain of information security, information technology, maintaining confidentiality involves guaranteeing that only authorized personnel can access systems and data alongside, instituting safeguards to avert unauthorized disclosure or theft of information. So it's about keeping information confidential. Only those that need the information and when they need the information, can have access. So, this is where we, implement things like encryption, for example. Integrity is the next part. So, ensuring integrity is crucial in maintaining reliability. And, specialists in cybersecurity craft advanced systems designed to confirm that data remains unaltered. So, in simple format, this is, for example, a hash. You download a piece of software and you go check the SHA-256. I did this today. I downloaded Kali Linux. I wanted to make sure I had a legitimate version. I ran a PowerShell script that checked the SHA-256, and I made sure that those hashes matched. That way I know the integrity of that file is unchanged from when it was uploaded to the server for me to download to the version that I downloaded. Availability, probably the most important, and as we know, CDK, all of the data for those 15,000 automotive dealerships is currently unavailable, and I laugh, but frankly, it's a nervous laugh because when we talk about availability, it is key. Experts dedicate efforts to ensure that systems and data are reliably accessible by users when it's required. So, when we think about it, this is the real challenge, the challenge between availability and security. How much do we secure data? How deeply do we encrypt data? How long does it take to de-encrypt the data so that it can be presented, so that it can be utilized, right? So it demands careful preparation of the ability to respond quickly, right, to any interruption. So, here we talk about, especially in cloud, clustering data, clustering services, having data available in multiple data centers so that if one data center goes down, we don't lose access to that. Imagine, if all of the Facebook data centers went down, oh my gosh, the uprising that would be created. All right, folks, so that's it for part 2. I'll see you in part 3. Take care.